This news blast is brought to you by Haven, helping all victims in need, which will be hosting discussions about domestic violence in rural parts of Armstrong County, Pennsylvania, in March through May. For further details, check out the Pennsylvania Equality Project website, paequality.com. From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is our daily news blast for February 21st, 2025. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison released a formal legal opinion Thursday that President Donald Trump's executive order on transgender athletes violates the Minnesota Human Rights Act. The Minnesota State High School League requested the opinion after the U.S. Department of Education launched an investigation into the Athletic Association for saying it would continue to allow transgender student athletes to compete based on their gender identity. The Minnesota State High School League said it would fully cooperate with the investigation, but suggested that it would get a formal opinion from the Minnesota Attorney General's office. Based on the plain language of the statute, educational institutions and the MSHSL would violate the MHRA by prohibiting transgender athletes from participating in extracurricular activities according to their gender identity, Ellison concluded in his opinion. According to Ellison, the MHRA defines gender identity as a person's inherent sense of being a man, woman, both, or neither. A person's gender identity may or may not correspond to their assigned sex at birth or to their primary or secondary sex characteristics. Trump's executive order gives the federal government wide latitude to pull federal funding for entities that deprive women and girls of fair athletic opportunities by allowing transgender athletes to compete. The MSHSL responded by saying it would continue to follow state law, which protects Minnesotans from being discriminated against based on their gender identity. In Minnesota, participation and eligibility of transgender student athletes is determined by state law through the Minnesota Human Rights Act and the Minnesota Constitution. The MSHSL said in a statement earlier this month. The Minnesota State High School League, similar to other youth sports organizations, is subject to state anti-discrimination laws which prohibit discrimination based on gender identity. Therefore, students in Minnesota are allowed to participate consistent with their gender identity. League member schools have done excellent work in respecting students and their individual situations as they determine their participation and eligibility within interscholastic sports. The league will continue to review existing state laws alongside the new presidential executive order and its timeline, processes for states, and requirements that are included. Minnesota House Republicans wrote a letter to the MSHSL last week urging the league to reconsider its policy. In the letter, which was posted on social media by House Speaker Representative Lisa DeMuth, lawmakers called for the MSHSL to comply with President Trump's order and offered to engage in constructive dialogue about the policy. Earlier this month, the Education Department said it was investigating the MSHSL and the California Interscholastic Federation for plans to violate federal anti-discrimination laws related to girls' and women's sports. The CIF said it complies with a state law that permits students to participate in school programs and activities, including athletic teams and competitions, consistent with the student's gender identity, irrespective of the gender listed on these students' records. Spokeswoman Rebecca Brutlag said in an email on Friday. Collegiately, the NCAA revised its transgender participation policy to limit women's college sports athletes to athletes assigned as female at birth. The National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, a governing body for smaller schools, effectively banned transgender athletes in 2023 from women's sports. The number of transgender athletes competing at the high school and college level is believed to be small, but the topic became a campaign issue for Trump last year as he declared his intent to keep men Out of women's sports, NCAA President Charlie Baker, a former Massachusetts governor, has said fewer than 10 transgender athletes are competing in sports under his purview. Last week, the Education Department launched an investigation into San Jose State University, the University of Pennsylvania, and the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association for allegedly violating the executive order. That's our news blast for this hour. All our news blasts are available on our Blue Sky account. Be sure to download the Live 365 app to take PEP Radio with you wherever you go. Stick around. Coming up next is the latest Meadville weather forecast on PEP Radio.